Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast, or should I say, it's the last football podcast. Not ever, just for now. Season has ended, people. Season has ended. Moving into European football, which probably going to be less coverage, let's say. So yes, season is over, and we have our season roundup for you. Find out how we predicted the season, how we saw the season going, highest goal scorer, best team, etc. And find out what happened in last week's games. Before we get started, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Share the podcast around. That's the big one. That's the main one. Share that podcast around. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast Football Podcast.
Recording in progress.
Yes, indeed. And for the final time this year, welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to the CookieCast Football Podcast with myself. And for those of you watching on YouTube, the three smiling, happy faces that you see on your screen as we speak, Messrs. Cook, Moore and Woodmansey. How are we this week, gents, seeing as there is no football left to savour, as it were?
Surprisingly relaxed.
That's always the best way to be. Obviously, the European Championships will no doubt fill the void that the lack of club games brings with it in the summer. But I'm getting discerning no's from the gang. Well, just don't look forward to the England games. Just watch all the other games that'll be on during the course of the days that we're working. So that'll be fine. Anyway, so last week we predicted the final game of the season, which just so happened to see Andrew's adopted side of Manchester City taking on Andrew's potentially, but almost definitely actual side of Manchester United. And I don't think any of us gave Manchester United a hope in hell's chance. And that proved to be rather foolish of us. As I don't know about anyone else, but within the first 15 minutes, this game had a feel of, I think City have massively underestimated United here. / City have been on the piss for 5 days straight, and they don't really know what they're doing. There was a moment where I think City were trying to play out from the back, and it almost fell at the feet of Bruno Fernandes, and almost cost City a goal. And I think at that point I was thinking, not sure how this one's going to go. But the first goal
in the opening, you know, when they do like the video package in the build up to like the start of the game, they should have had like the trials and tribulations of Man United this season, and like what like the ups, the downs, how hard it's been, the fact that they're going to get rid of the manager. Now they're keeping him. Now we're going to get rid of him. Now we're keeping him again. And then when it came to the Man City bit, just show the photographs of them all leaving the club from after the Premier League trophy was lifted. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Just led a massive hokey-cokey conga line led by Chief Botherer Jack Grealish.
Chief Botherer.
But yes, the opening goal came after half an hour, and not the way that I think a lot of people would have predicted it. Not only was it a long ball clipped over the top from a United perspective, but it was a complete defensive howler that constituted the club for United. I believe was it Gvardiol that was round on the cover
Stones, wasn't it?
No.
Say again?
It was
Stones with the header.
No, it was Guardiola that headed it.
I thought it was Guardiola personally, but I think it was because I think he was playing left back, wasn't he? So I think he took it in.
Because they swapped them around as well, haven't they? They played in different positions the week before, and they had a shot around on the back line.
It's very much something that Pep has done during the course of the season. Let's put it this way: when Tony Pulis was playing 4 centre halves across his back,
Andy, mark it up. He's mentioned
People said he was a dinosaur and he was, refusing to run with the times. When Pep Guardiola plays for 4 centre halves across his back 4, he's a genius. He's an innovator. He's, groundbreaking. He's the best to ever do it. I think justice for Pulis is absolutely the mantra of this one.
Well, when Pep walks out in a tracksuit next season, we'll all know the truth.
All about the baseball cap, motherfucker. Big baseball cap energy. Yes, it was a horrendous mix-up from the goalkeeper and the defender from the City perspective. One didn't give the other a call. The City, the keeper was so far out of his goal. Got absolutely nothing on it, mainly because the defender hadn't had the call and headed it back to him, of which the very, very grateful Alejandro Garnacho just popped in to score the easiest goal of his career. I believe this is mere days after he was voted for the goal of the season, after his ridiculously good overhead kick that he scored against Everton in about week 3 or something like that. So I don't think a better goal was scored all season. But yeah, this one not quite on the par as his overhead strike. But United weren't content there. They actually made it 2-0 on the 39th minute. A lovely little, from what I can remember, it was a little passing move down the right-hand side that ended up with the ball being played across the box to the edge of the box where Bruno Fernandes was there for a cheeky no-look pass into the path of Kobbie Mainoo, who wrong-footed the keeper and slotted it just perfectly underneath him to make it 2-0. That's how it stayed until half-time, and it's long into the second half. It was still 2-0. There was a couple of Man City chances where Onana came up with some good saves to push the chances away. But it was actually a horrendous goalkeeping error for the second time in the game that actually let Man City back in. Jeremy Doku on the 87th minute with a bit of a speculative strike from just outside the box, which I believe the phrase that my dad would have used back in the day would be that Onana could have thrown his cap on it to stop it from going in, but decided to instead just palm it directly into the side netting. Classic poppadom wrists himself, striking once again. I think City pushed to get the equaliser and eventually the winner, but nothing came. And surprisingly, Manchester United ended up as your 2-1 winners and the new holders of the FA Cup. So Man City don't make it back-to-back trebles. They don't even make it back-to-back doubles. They make it 4 Premier Leagues in a row, and that's it. And not only that, they lose the support of one Andrew Cook. And I think, if we're being honest, lads, that's the trophy they're going to miss the most. When it comes to at the end of the season, they're sitting and going through the details. They'll be like, Champions League was nice, we've had it before. FA Cup, we've had that before as well. The support of Mr. Cook, that comes and goes, but we needed it. We needed it to take us to the next level, and sadly it's gone.
I'm really going to get a big graphic stuck on the wall now to say we need him back with like the outline of Andy's face.
No Premier League club has ever had the consistent support of Andrew Cook until now. That'll be the banner they're going for next season. Yeah, surely this must be a difficult time for you, Mr. Cook.
In a lot of ways, it feels like a homecoming. I feel like John Rambo. I've come full circle. I've walked that long gravel path back to Old Trafford and just was like, yeah, here we are, back again. And yeah, you know, I had a good ride with City. It was a good long stretch. I imagine there's probably some stats to consider.
We will go through the season-long stats or predictions, as it were, in a moment. But yes, obviously, Mr. Cook started the season as a Wrexham fan, obviously on their journey back into the Football League, and we set somewhat of a not a task as such at the start of the season, but we set ourselves a little bit of an interesting side something or other side task. I don't know. I have no idea how to phrase it.
Side hustle.
Side hustle. Yeah, we'll call it a side hustle. So, one of the questions we asked on the season-long predictions was, how many times will Andrew change teams due to the winner stays on method during the course of the season? Now, Matt was the lowest to guess with 14 times. Andy said 16 times. I said 18 times. And Stu said 21 times. Now, I have made a note of all of the different changes in team that Andy went through, and can say that his longest streak with any one side was indeed the 14 weeks that he spent as a Manchester City supporter. Now, there was also a lot of teams that he didn't even get through one game with. Sadly, Wrexham being one of those teams, as I believe they got pumped 3-5 on the opening week by MK Dons, no less. 5-3 at home on the opening weekend of the season. Disappointing, to say the least. So, after going through all of the results over the course of the season, I can say that the two people that were closest to Mr. Cook's number of teams that he would support during the course of the season was indeed Mr. Andrew Cook with his 16 and Mr. Matthew Moore with his 14, as 15 different clubs were supported during the season.
I genuinely thought I was going to be miles away. It just felt like there was one stage where it was like...
Yeah, I had a look back, and I believe that obviously MK Dons beat Wrexham first game of the season, so he immediately changed clubs. I believe they then got beaten the second or third game that they played. Bear in mind, obviously, at the start of the season, we made a raft of predictions before I went on honeymoon, so we didn't have a podcast for 3 or 4 weeks. And by the time I'd got back, he was already on to his 4th club of the season. So, Wrexham, where he started, they were beaten by MK Dons, who in turn were beaten by Wickham, who in turn were beaten by Lincoln City. Now, I think Andy rode with Lincoln for at least a couple of weeks, until he ended up with some team from the East Midlands that play in white and may have been supported this season from League One. We don't need to go into that. But they were then in turn beaten by Shrewsbury Town. Shrewsbury succumbed to Wigan Athletic, who were beaten by Port Vale. And in the same week that Port Vale beat Wigan, they came up against an unstoppable juggernaut in the League Cup, based in the northeast of England, and already supported by one of the members of this podcast. So for a stint, Mr. Andrew Cook was also a Middlesbrough fan. Sadly, he wasn't to support Middlesbrough for much longer, as on Boxing Day they were turned over by Rotherham for one of their 4 wins of the season, I believe. Yes, he was then after Rotherham. I believe they lost after 1 game to Fulham. Fulham were turned over by their West London rivals Chelsea. Chelsea were beaten by Wolves. Wolves were beaten by Brentford. Brentford were beaten by Man City in, I believe, February. And then Andrew rode Man City all the way through to the FA Cup final, where he finally ended the season as a Manchester United supporter. So, it's taken him a while, but he did eventually get home, shall we say. And obviously, a little something to go for that. Never supported the same team twice. It was never a sort of a team that beat him, that he ended up with a back at the start or anything like that. So there was no duplications. But yeah, 15 teams in total. So just the 15 shirts that you need to buy for next season.
On that note, I did have a little look, and so if you took the average price of a shirt, usually with printing these days, been around £65, that would set you back somewhere around £975 for the season, Andy.
You're all right with that, are you?
Can we redress the tattoo option, because that would actually be cheaper?
It lasts longer.
Well, what you could do is you could adopt the Duncan Ferguson approach and basically just get the teams that you played for tattooed on you, and then cross the team out when you get transferred from them and put the next team down, I believe. Because I believe he has Rangers, Everton and Newcastle tattooed on his arm. And I believe he then just scored through the club that he'd moved on from. Which,
I'm happy with that. It'll cost me less money, so...
It's like the football version of getting your girlfriend's name tattooed on you somewhere.
So yes, that was Mr. Cook's season in a nutshell. But obviously, at the start of the season, we made predictions about our own respective teams. Now, obviously, Stu was tasked with giving us his one to watch for Hull. I was tasked with giving us a one to watch for Middlesbrough. And obviously, Matt was given the task of doing it for Nottingham Forest. So, we'll go through the ones to watch first. And we'll have to agree between us who had the biggest nightmare. I think we probably will come to a consensus opinion. Stu, how did Jason Lakilo get on for Hull this season?
Didn't play very many games up until January, then got sold.
You know, when you said it, and I was like, that name has never been mentioned on this podcast. Between the predictions and then, I presume, I would have been listening, but I don't even remember him being mentioned when he left in January either. So
absolutely not. Would it be remiss of us to say that he probably left the club having never scored?
I don't know if that's right. I don't know if there was a cup game potentially.
Did he join in the summer?
Yeah, joined in the summer. Big pomp and circumstance. The problem is that they bought him as competition for Philogene. Although they did play on opposite sides when they did play together earlier in the season. And it turned out it was a massive one-trick pony. And defenders had him worked out after week 3, in the sense of they'd have sent somebody to watch the game or watched it on, on a video on demand kind of a deal. Seen that he'd try and step over outside and cut back inside, which worked for 3 weeks, and everything was fine. And then in week 4, it was like, just put your foot there, and he'll walk right into you and leave the ball there. And rinse and repeat until he was then subsequently let go in January, which is a shame.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I didn't really do much better, as my one to watch was Sam Silvera. Now, did get a few goals, but certainly wasn't the all-action replacement for some of the players that we'd had on loan at the end of the season. Certainly didn't replace the goals of an Aaron Ramsey, shall we say. Probably a little bit too soon for him to go into the league, I suppose. Obviously, he'd come from Australia. probably took him longer to get to grips with the pace of the league than he probably realised at first. But I think he was used a lot at the start of the season, mainly because there was no other options there. Obviously, there was massive turnover of the playing staff in the off season, and it was a case of he had to play the games because there was literally no one else other than the youth team that could have done it. So I think had he been given the time to actually sort of like get to grips with the sort of the new country, the league, and things like that, he probably would have been in a better position. Ironically enough, the better one to watch would probably have been Morgan Rogers, obviously signed from Manchester City in the off season. I believe it was undisclosed, but it was rumoured to be around £1 million. I now look a little bit foolish, as I said in my one away game that I went to at Bradford City, that I'm not convinced about that guy. I think he could probably do with some more time in the under-23s. And then obviously he went on a run where he scored about 10 in like 15 games, tore some defences to pieces, got a January move to Aston Villa, and will be playing in the Champions League next season. So that was top banter, and yet again another fantastic pick from the mind of Paul Williams. Matt, can you remember who your one to watch was?
I think I was like, I won't do the obvious one, and then I went Danilo.
You did indeed go with Danilo. Would it be safe to say he's probably regressed a bit this season from what he had the season before?
I think he got injured early on in the season, but then I think he spent most of the like kind of autumn, beginning of the season recovering. And in the meantime, I think whenever you read on the message boards or Instagram and stuff like that, Brazilian fans go mad because apparently Cooper was playing him out of position, playing him on like a left winger or in the front three, or like that in that three behind the striker. He's meant to be like a more defensive midfielder kind of thing, apparently, which I've not seen any evidence of that particularly. I think, but then he's been put into, towards the end of the season, he was put into like two in front of the defence next to Ryan Yates and stuff like that. So I think with the managerial change and how shocking Forrest had been, he's been pushed and pulled all over the shop. He did score an absolute worldie of a goal against Brentford. I think it was like a ball came out to him, he kind of kept it up with his thigh and then volleyed it in the back of the net. It's like on one of the kind of goals of the season for Forest. But yeah, he perhaps hasn't kicked on as much from where he was last season. But I thought he would be playing further up the field and doing the similar kind of stuff to what he was doing towards the end of last season, where he was very attack-minded and stuff like that. And I think, unfortunately, he's kind of regressed with the fact that the Forest midfield hasn't been as kind of forceful as it was, and he's been in and out of the team a lot as they've tried to find the perfect matchup. So, he definitely wasn't. He probably isn't the what was it. Well, he wouldn't have been on the ones to watch retrospective list, but yeah, he's not done. It's not been great, but it's not been a great season. So, like a bit of a kind of second season syndrome. He kind of fitted in with that kind of Forest not kicking on this season, and I think unfortunately he's looked better towards the end of the season. He's looked kind of thing. He's only like 20-21 though. He has a little bit of a kind of chicken with his head cut off at times kind of aspect to his game. I think as he grows up and learns the game a bit more, he might be a bit more settled than what he does.
Yeah. So yeah, not the wins that we all were expecting there in our ones to watch for the season. Obviously, we'll have to get our thinking caps on for next season's pre-season predictions.
I think mine could have been a hell of a lot worse, because mine initially was I had Brennan Johnson on the list. Obviously Gibbs White, which would have been fine, but the Brennan Johnson one would have been one to watch for Spurs now.
Well, it got you a boatload of cash.
Yes.
It got a boatload of cash in the coffers. You can never be too disappointed with that. So, that's our ones to watch for each of our respective teams. But we did make, obviously, finishing position and top scorer picks for our teams as well. So we are going to take a short break. But when we come back, we'll go through the rest of the details of what we made for our own teams and then the respective divisions that all three of our teams found themselves in this season. Let's see how close any of us got with those when we come back.
Recording in progress.
And just like that, we're back. So yes, so like we said, at the beginning of the season, we all made some predictions based around our own respective teams. So we'll go through Hull's predictions first. So, in the 2022-23 season, they had finished 15th, with Oscar Estepinian as the top scorer with 13 goals. Coming to the 2023-2024 season, Stu, surprisingly enough, predicted them to finish the highest out of the four of us with a 9th place finish. Myself and Matt had them down for a 10th place finish. Andy had them finishing in 12th. They did better than everyone's prediction, and obviously they finished 7th, just outside the playoffs, just ran out of games at the end of the season, and obviously the loss on the final day against Plymouth in the end was immaterial. Obviously they needed to win and have a huge goal swing for it to have done anything for them to sneak into that final playoff spot, which was taken by Norwich in the end. The top goal scorer did drop from the season before. Now, according to, correct me if I've got this wrong, Stu, but I had Philogene down as the top goal scorer in the end with 11 goals. Now, I don't know if that's just in the league or if that's in all competitions.
I've got him down as 12, so I assume 11 will be the league.
In that case, we'll take that. So Philogene with 11, or with 12, obviously in all competitions. Now, I imagine it would have been difficult for us to have predicted Mr. Philogene as the top goal scorer, as when he went to press, as it were, I don't think he was even at the club. So our picks even of myself and Stu picking Liam Delap as the top goal scorer, and Matt and Andy picking Oscar Estepinian as the top goal scorer, were incredibly fruitless. Oscar Estepinian more so than others, as how many weeks into the season was it that he was sent away on loan?
It was early. It was very early. But he went to Mets, didn't he?
I believe so. Was it on loan? Was it a loan with a view to a permanent transfer? And has he now made that move permanent?
No, because he came back and then went somewhere else. He's still our player. Whether when new manager gets confirmed, which by the way still hasn't happened yet, after we talked about that at length last week, whether he'll want him back in his side or not, who knows? But he could still come back.
So yes, from a predictions perspective, Stu was the closest with the league finish with 9th, and obviously, I suppose technically myself and Stu were the closest when it came to the top scorers. We both had Liam Delap, and he at least scored this season, whereas sadly Mr. Estepinian did not.
And
yes,
had he not been injured for 2 months, he'd have scored a lot more probably as well.
You got one.
I do apologise.
Minutes per goal is 162 minutes per goal, which is better than anybody else, apart from Ohio, who's on 80 minutes per goal.
Which begs the question of why do you not play more minutes? The question that must be asked. So that's the Hull predictions done and dusted. For the Middlesbrough predictions, coming off the back of the 2022-23 season, they had finished 4th in the league, lost in the playoffs to Coventry, of course, who then went on to lose to Luton in the final. they did have a top scorer and the top scorer in the whole division in Stuart with 29 in all competitions. So, podcast predictions for where they would finish. Myself and Stu were both in agreement that they'd finish second in the division. Andy was even more optimistic and had gone for a first place finish for the boys in red and white. Matt had gone with a much more realistic fifth place finish. And of course, they decided to do the inverse of Hull and shit the bed more so than we had recommended they do, finishing in 8th position, 1 shy of Hull, 2 shy of the playoffs. Again, the game has just run out, and for what would be the second season in a row, they were punished for a very, very poor start. I believe it took until the 8th game of the season for us to get our first win. After 7 games, they had 1 point on the board. Not the best. And yeah, it looked for a time that Carrick may have potentially been in a little bit of a rocky position with his job, but that wasn't to be the case. Obviously, he steadied the ship, brought in a couple more signings, and they eventually managed to finish 8th. Top scorer. None of us have had the best field day. Stu, Matt, and Andy all picked Stuart, who was, of course, subsequently sold to Ajax before the season started. So, no goals for him. I picked Marcus Fors, who I believe spent about 80% of the season injured, which was nice. I'm just trying to look here to see if I got his stats or how many he actually scored in the end. I think he did get 4 or 5, from what I can remember, over the course of the season. I remember him scoring against Sunderland and doing a very strange celebration, which never really sort of made sense. 7?
7?
To say he had reduced minutes because he was injured for the majority of the season, I'll take 7 goals.
176 minutes per goal.
There you go.
Every other game.
What a fabulous striker / right winger / injury room participant. The actual top goal scorer for the Borough was someone who was signed after we had done our pre-season predictions. Seems to be about right for this particular podcast. Emmanuel Latte Lath brought into the club after we'd done our predictions with 18 for the season. He also had a spell of time on the injured list. So if we'd got a full season out of him, maybe we'd have got close to the Stuart goals from the season before. And finally, for our teams, Nottingham Forest. So off the back of the 2022-23 season, Forest had finished in 16th with Taiwo Wonyi as the top goal scorer on 11 goals. I was the most optimistic of the group. I'd gone for a 13th placed finish. Stu and Matt had both gone for 14th, whereas Andy went for a 15th place finish. And Andy was the closest, as 17th was the final reckoning position for Forest. So a slight regression from the position they had the season before, but all that counts is that they're in the Premier League for the 2024-2025 season. That is all that matters. Top goal scorer, surprisingly enough, we all picked Taiwo Awoniyi, but didn't factor in the fact that he would spend more than half of the season on the injured list.
And the rest. Yeah, he's not. Yeah, bad season injury-wise.
Yeah, definitely not his season from an injury perspective, which was annoying, as he started the season in an incredibly rich vein of form, in the same way that he'd ended last season. I believe he got a goal in the first game of the season against Arsenal. Maybe got one in the next game.
One against Man United, I think.
Yeah, he was definitely one of those players that I'd tipped up to my fantasy football playing friends that he might be one to get in your fantasy team. as I felt he was good for some goals early doors, and then obviously succumbed to his injury.
He's had a groin problem. Yeah, don't we all? He came in. I think he came into the season with this groin problem, and they thought they could manage it through the season. And then I think he went to a Nigeria international kind of friendly, did something there, and then aspersions were cast upon the medical support at the Nigerian Super Eagles camp. He came back, then required an operation, didn't come back till after Christmas, and then he was on a minute restriction, and then bizarrely Nuno played him for 90, nearly 100 minutes against Manchester United in the FA Cup, which was absolutely insane. And then, what a shock, he then didn't play again until the last couple of matches of the season, because he'd aggravated it. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically his deal for the season. It was, I think, and the kind of general gist is at Forest, that with the fans, not so much the club, is that he's a bit of a sick note. He's not played a full season and misses chunks of time as well.
So, of the, trying to do maths incredibly quickly, 76 Premier League games that he would have been eligible to play in the 2 seasons he's been at Forest. Do we reckon he's even made it to 40?
No, absolutely not, no. I would have thought so anyway.
Yeah. Disappointing, because obviously, like I said, at the end of the season before, was it something like he scored in 6 on the spin or something like that?
Well, most of his 11 goals came in that stint from about, I can't think, when they beat Southampton February time, and I think he just went on a run of scoring a massive chunk of goals. But yeah, I think it would
probably be a little bit too simplistic to say that he single-handedly kept him up, but he was definitely the guy who put he definitely put the team on his back at the end of that season. I suppose it's that sort of thing where, in a kind of similar way, it's a bit how like Hudson-Odoi felt towards the end of this season. He was the guy who sort of stepped up and sort of seemed to be the guy who was like, yeah, I'll put the shift in, I'll be the one who'll get the goals and stuff like that. But it wasn't Callum Hudson-Odoi who did end up as the top goal scorer of the season. In a change to our previous two teams, the top goal scorer actually increased this season. We went from 11 to 15, and everyone's favourite, Wood, was the top goal scorer with 15. So that's a pretty good return for a guy who, let's be honest, was definitely bought as a second choice striker.
Desperation, because Taiwo was injured. I think that's
absolutely
what it was.
So that is our personal teams predictions gone through, but we did do predictions for the Premier League and Championship. So we'll go through the Premier League predictions. You'll be all surprised to hear we all picked Man City to win the league. No surprises there. And then the rest of us, 3 of the 4 of us had a top 4 consisting of Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester United. Shame on myself, Mr. Woodmansey and Mr. Cook. Terrible form. Matt, not much better, as his top 4 were Arsenal, Man United and Chelsea. Nope, not the best. So myself, Stu and Andy got 2 of the 4 correct.
I'm not. You can't say not the best, because not even somebody who had just been 12 rounds with Tyson Fury would have picked fucking Villa to finish 4th.
Well, no, but there's always one. Because there was obviously people that had put the bet on for Leicester to win the league when they were 5,000 to 1 that year and stuff like that. So there's always some crazy bastard who's put on a ridiculous bet that always ends up paying out and stuff like that. However, For the relegated sides, 3 of the 4 of us had picked Luton or Bournemouth, so we got one of those right. Myself, Stu, and Matt all went for Luton. Myself and Matt went for Sheffield United. Sadly, neither me picking Bournemouth, Stu picking Bournemouth, and Everton. Matt picking
close at one point then.
Well, yeah, Matt picked Wolves to be his other relegated side. Sadly, Andy didn't get any of the 3. Andy had gone for West Ham, Bournemouth, and Everton to be his 3 relegated sides. So no point in that. Top scorer, Stu, Matt, and Andy all picked Erling Haaland. No surprises there. I tried to get a little bit cute and went for Mo Salah. Didn't really work out for me. I thought I might be onto a winner there when Haaland kept missing games and looked about half the player that he was the season before. So in total, so of a total of 8 points, I got 5. Stu got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Matt got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Andy got 1, 2, 3, 4. So, very, very close on the Premier League predictions. For the Championship predictions, obviously, Andy, as previously discussed, had picked Middlesbrough to win the division. Stu had picked Leeds to win the Championship. Don't know quite how that panned out in the end. But me and Matt were the sensible ones. We went with Leicester.
They did their best to absolutely fuck it, though, let's be honest.
Yeah. They got to the point where they had about 85 points on the board in about February and then just thought, should we try and make it a bit interesting, fellas?
There was that point, though, almost, whether it, like you say, February onwards, where it was Leicester, Ipswich and Leeds all been like, no, it's your... No, honestly, you go, it's fine. And then in the end, it was just... I think Maresca just thought, nah, fuck it, and then carried on in the end. But...
It was interesting, to say the least. Runners up, none of us had picked Ipswich, sadly. Myself and Stuart both gone for Borough. Matt went with Southampton. Andy went with Coventry off the back of their playoff defeat from the season before. Sadly, none of us picked the playoff winner either. Matt obviously couldn't, as he had Southampton. I went with West Brom, who lost in the semi-finals to the eventual winners Southampton. Stu went with Sunderland, who I think finished in about 15th. Not the best. Oh, Matt was very close. Matt did go with Leeds. So, the closest of a lot of us so far. Andy went with Blackburn. So, even worse than Stu's pick. I think Blackburn finished about 18th. So, not
with,
the best.
With the highest scorer in the division, by the way.
To be fair, yeah, Blackburn would almost certainly have been relegated had they not had the top scorer in the division in Sammy Schmoditz. As for the relegated sides, all 4 of us got a point because we all had Rotherham. Sadly, the only other person who got points there was Matt, with his inspired pick of Birmingham City. In about week 12 of the season, that was looking a little bit foolish when they were 5th. And
got to send my thank you letter to Wayne Rooney, Tom Brady.
Of course. My other 2 picks were Cardiff and QPR, who Cardiff probably were fine for the majority of the season. QPR at one point did look as if they were in the shit.
Yeah.
And very much could have been dragged in. Stu's 3 was pretty much spot on. You had Rotherham, Plymouth and Sheff Wed. And obviously Plymouth and Sheff Wed Plymouth certainly went into the last game knowing that they needed to win to stay up, and obviously
did. And what shithouse team did they play that week?
Yes, but as discussed, it wouldn't have mattered even if Hull had have won. So it's not the end of the world. And Chef Wednesday had managed to make himself safe with one game to go, give or take. Matt's other team that he picked was Preston, who I think finished around mid-table. And these other two teams, similar to me, had also gone for QPR and Cardiff. So not the best. And then when it came to the top scorer in the division, sadly, none of us had the foresight to pick Sammy Schmodix, the attacking midfielder from Blackburn Rovers. No, we went with some much more sensible picks. Stu and Andy had both gone with Akpom to go back-to-back. So, 0 goals there. I went with Foz, so 7 goals there. Matt went with Daka at Leicester. Didn't seem to play all that much. So would be amazed if he got into double figures for the season, personally. No one was anywhere close in the top scorer things. So, point-wise from that, out of a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I got 2. Stu got 1. Matt got 3. And Andy got 1. So overall, I believe Matt takes the win for the season-long predictions. So, congratulations, Mr. Moore. That's kind of all I've got really to go through. Was there anything that stood out for either of you lads from the season as a whole, or something that you'll take away as your main overlying sort of memory of the season, as it were?
I don't know. This sheer insanity for about like a month, where the owner marched on the pitch and sent out tweets and employed Mark Clattenburg to be a referee consultant.
Oh my word!
That small bit. I think the biggest thing for me is obviously, I don't know. Forest fans obviously I've not been very often whilst Cooper was there, so I'm not massively attached to him. But obviously Steve Cooper being sacked, the person who got Forest back into the Premier League after 23 years, that's the kind of fight shame. I think we said it at the time, so if people want to go and listen to it, the way the players gave up on him was an absolute disgrace, because some of the players that were playing for him wouldn't have a job in English football if he wasn't there. But yeah, owner insanity and the kind of people are calling him the best manager since Clough. That really bugs me, because Frank Clark was absolutely fantastic at Forest in the mid-90s. Got us into Europe and stuff like that. So anybody who says that Cooper's the best manager since Clough is insane. But obviously achieved something that a lot of managers have struggled to achieve, like 20 plus. So yeah, kind of those are the two things. I just like a normal season next year.
Yeah, I think the thing with Cooper was that he brought some very much needed stability to a club that had almost none for at least a decade. So,
get ready.
Stu, anything from your perspective? Obviously, was this the first season back with your season pass?
Yeah, so obviously I'm fortunate enough to go to a lot more of the games than the last few seasons for sure. But this is might be a bit soppy, but the thing that I'll take away from it mostly is taking my boys to their first away game, because that was fucking hilarious. Having to go through the whole conversation multiple times of what you hear at football you don't repeat at school was definitely an education when 10 minutes into Rotherham versus Hull, one of my boys turned to me and said, "Daddy, that Mr. Behind us has already sworn 5 times." I was like, "Mate, you're going to have to stop keeping count here, because you're not going to watch the game." But yeah, that was good fun, and obviously because of the way that the game went, particularly that night, we was 1-0 down after 4 minutes, looking absolutely dead in the water at half-time with nothing going on. Rossini made 3 subs at half-time, and then came out blazing, and it's also the night of the now somewhat infamous Rabona goal from Philogene, which was it's good to see live. So there is that. But other than that, weirdly, probably in agreement with what the chairman was saying about the 3-3 Ipswich game, because that was, even though we'd beaten Cardiff 3-0 at home earlier in the season, and that was up to that point. And that was probably the most complete performance of the season. But the Ipswich one was more pleasing because they went behind 3 times and didn't give up. And it was just a really, really good atmosphere. My sort of concern going forward would be that now the sort of turbulence with the manager leaving and the fact that half of the team has now gone, whether they be loan signings or some of the out-of-contract players, it feels very much at this point like they're in limbo in the close season. And I know it's early doors, but I'd feel much better if they started ironing some of that out pretty soon.
Yeah, obviously a lot will change at all 3 of the clubs over the course of the off season. Obviously, Borough have wasted no time. They've announced their first signing of the summer. Obviously, Stuart will be delighted to hear that Mr. Luke Ayling has made the switch from Leeds, a permanent one, after the expiration of his contract at Ellen Road. So yeah, he will be the first, I'm sure, of many additions to the Middlesbrough squad. I'm assuming after the upheaval of last off-season, Carrick will probably want to get his business done nice and early so he can get on the training pitch with the new lads as quick as possible. I suppose for me, in a season where Borough had almost, because of the terrible start to the season, they knew they were up against it again to try and make it into the playoff contention, and obviously they had no chance for automatics, given the strength of the 3 relegated sides. I suppose the one thing that I will take away from the season is, despite Leicester being so strong, we managed to beat them twice over the course of the season. So to say that Leicester are probably one of the best teams that the Championship's ever seen, or certainly in the last 10 to 15 years, Borough were better than them on 2 separate occasions. Just a shame that they couldn't beat Rotherham either of the 2 occasions that they played them this season. But swings and roundabouts, so that's it. That's another.
Hey,
sorry, yeah, Matt.
I think with both of your clubs, it depending on who you can keep through the summer, you've got a good platform. I think we said it last year, and then the platform kind of was sold from underneath the managers. Whereas this time, hopefully, if they can keep, if Borough keep Latte Lath, you've got scored 18 goals with a bit, slow start, and got some more, and then some injury time. And obviously, with Hull, is Philogene going to stay? That type of thing. You've got players that you can build the team around if they stay. But I think that's the worst thing, is that you need that stability and structure.
Absolutely, and I think just giving off the fact that obviously the three teams that went up the season before have come straight back down, Burnley, Luton and Sheffield United. Of those 3, Sheffield United look absolutely bereft of confidence in the Premier League at times, so I wouldn't be particularly worried about them. Burnley have literally just lost their manager, so they're looking like they're going to have to start again from scratch.
With Frank Lampard.
Oh my word. Has he actually been announced, or is that just the rumour?
No, but it's him and Steve Cooper are the 2, and you're there's one that's a realistic. The one should be done, and the other should not be allowed to manage a football club again.
The one showed him a claret shirt, and he's just gone, yeah, I'll do it. That's all it is.
But yeah, I think I'm feeling cautiously optimistic, shall we say, ahead of the new season. Obviously, like Matt said, transfers will play a massive part in it. And obviously, if Borough can keep together the majority of the squad, if Hull can keep together the majority of the squad, you'd like to think they'd be able to at least put together a top 6 charge, if not the top 2.
I'm not as convinced already, because like if you look at the list of sort of regular starters and people who were either scoring or like providing the assist, like players like Morton and Carvalho are just gone now. I think it'll be a bigger test as to see how much of those signings was the swing of the manager at the time and how much was the law of the club. So we'll see. We will absolutely see. And I think, as discussed on the last week, I think you can already for next season put me down for Sunderland in the playoffs if that's a thing. If Rossini does get confirmed as their manager, just to spite us.
Yes, that will be the interesting thing. Obviously, 6 new teams to discuss from a championship perspective. We've gone through the 3 relegated sides, but welcome along to Portsmouth, and the playoff winners Oxford United, who will be on the list for new games to go to next season. But yeah, that'll do us for another season. Thank you for all of you for listening along, watching along for the season. We very much appreciate it. Hit us up with a like, share and subscribe over on YouTube and on Spotify or wherever you're ripping this particular material from. We'll have a couple of weeks break whilst the European Championships are on. I dare say we'll come back to you hot and fresh with our pre-season predictions for 2024-2025 in around late July-ish, something like that. But the new season starts.
So it can be dead accurate, because all the players that we predict will definitely still be at the club by the end of September.
Absolutely nailed on. And let's be honest, if our top scorer hasn't been sold, he will almost certainly tear his ACL in the last pre-season game or something like that. So it'll all be tremendous fun, regardless. Let's just put it that way. So yes, join us again in late July, early August, where we'll go through our pre-season predictions for next season, and we'll wrap up all of the off-season business done by all of our teams. But until then, as always, and it's customary, take care of yourselves, keep an eye out for each other, and we'll see you when we're back. For now, tatty bye.
So there we go. What do you think to that? End of the season. 43 episodes, 43 weeks, 43 sets of games. However you want to look at it. That is 43 episodes of Season 6 of the Football Podcast in the book. Join us next season as we'll do it all again, as we do. Before that, and before you go, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review, and check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There we have social media links and an email button, and that way you can get in touch with us. That's it for this one. Till next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to these grumpy old men talk about football. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.